Hey everybody, I'm so excited today that my dear friend Becca is here to share with us. I swear everything that comes out of her mouth is golden. Um, you're in for a real treat. Just some quick guidelines. If you're using the chat and you want your comment read out loud, just put read before it. Be mindful that we all get enthusiastic, and I want to make sure everyone has turns. We generally leave some spots of silence so people who need a little longer to jump in can do so. We always keep it kind and respectful. That's never a problem. And I think that's pretty much it. We know it's Autistic Voices first. And with that, I'll hand it off to one of my favorite autistic voices.
Thank you, Dawn. I hope that I do you that comment justice. I do appreciate the introduction, and I'm excited to join you guys today. I'm excited to share with you my little journey as an autistic person and where that took me, and where I hope that I can help take you guys. So that's going to be what I'm going to do today. I'm going to share my presentation with you, and for my own sanity, it's best that I kind of hold questions until the end of my presentation. So I will go through everything I've got, and we'll try to keep it to 50 minutes and leave us with a good solid 10 minutes for questions. I am also really accessible. So if you find me on the internet and you want to reach out to me there, please do. I will have my email in these slides. I'm happy to share a PDF with Dawn and Roger so they can give you the slides. Any way that works for you. I'm definitely accessible. So if you don't get a chance to ask a question today, or something comes to you when you're processing at 4 o'clock in the morning, don't hesitate to reach out. I really will answer everything as soon as I get to it. So please feel free to do that. I'm going to go ahead and do my scary part, which is to share the screen, because I never know if I'm going to get it right. And of course, it never looks like how I want it to. So let's see. I have that there. Why isn't it registering there? Give me 1 second. It's not showing up for me to. Maybe it's in a Chrome tab somewhere. No. It's really interesting. Hold on 1 second. I'm so having, as always, I have these challenges with. Okay, let's see if I do that and come back here. It should be a choice. Yay! Okay. There we go. Hopefully you guys will be able to see my slides now. And I will go ahead and begin. Today's presentation is going to be called, or is called, self-defined living, creating a life you don't need a vacation from. And that's sort of my little journey of going through autism. So here's a little bit about me. I am an openly autistic professional on the mission to close the disability gap in leadership by working with companies to attract and retain disabled talent. That's what I do out in the world, right? But I was identified as autistic as an adult, and I have since become a dedicated autism and neurodiversity advocate, researcher, consultant, speaker, and author. I'm also an animal lover with a special affinity for cats, and I spend most of my free time with my many animals and my husband, Antonio. So that's a little bit about me, but let's get into why I'm here. I'm here to talk about this stuff, which I hope for you guys, some of these covers of some of these books look familiar. These are books that within the last 10 years or so have been bestsellers, right, in an area we call personal development. This fancy area used to be called self-help, right? And now we call it personal development. All of these books came out, and as I was getting my autism diagnosis, they were out in the world, right? And I was kind of processing that diagnosis and also trying to learn a little bit more about myself. And as I was reading through these books, my little autistic brain started to pick up patterns. You noticed that all of these books that were doing really well had a lot of things in common, right? And what it was a lot of the same lessons wrapped up, right, in stories, right, wrapped up in lessons, wrapped up in what I call like gray area, right, and people's personal coming to this information, right? But the stuff they were sharing was really basically the same. And that's the journey of me creating this self-defined living, because what I wanted to do for us as autistics was say, hey, these personal development books are great, but they don't work for me. because they were written by the neuromajority for the neuromajority. But they do have things in there that are important. They're just kind of putting it around in stories and making it pretty. And I, as an autistic, don't need that pretty. So I started to pull out those patterns and I started to put together some lessons and stick them into my life. And that's what we're going to talk about today. In the beginning, there was me. Here I am as a very young child, and it was way back in the late 70s, right? Well before they would be looking for me as a girl with autism. But there I am, and you can already see that I have developed my special interests, and they are shown in this picture, right? So you see me little there with this book of baby animals, right? And to this day, right, almost 50 years later, animals and books are two of my special interests, right? So it started that young, right? And as you can see there, I always like to point out this face. I don't know, I think a lot of autistics, when we look at our baby pictures, we think about whether or not it was there all the time. And when I look at this baby picture, I go, oh yeah, I see all of that. And all of my autistic friends, we all have baby pictures where we have the same look on our face, where we're not smiling for the camera, or someone has clearly interrupted us in the middle of doing something that we were involved in, right? And we have that look. So I feel like, boom, I can already see my own autism in these pictures, right? And there I am, and I include this other picture on there because when I was first getting my diagnosis and coming out into the world 10 years ago, right, more than that, it's 12 years ago now, people would say we didn't have empathy. And I just want to show you there that all the way at like 2-3 years old, there I was, empathizing, right, taking care of my mother in the way that she takes care of me, right? And so I just wanted to share this sort of early beginnings, right, because it was there. It's been with me my whole life, right? Just because it got a name later doesn't mean anything. My whole life growing up, it was me and my mom. I grew up as an only child with a single mother. My dad was not really a part of my life, right? And so it was just me and her. She was what I call my neurotypical. She was the person I could count on, right? My person. I could ask her anything, not be embarrassed, know I wasn't going to be judged, right? But I was definitely somebody who was being challenged throughout my entire life, right? So here I am right before a diagnosis. I share these pictures with people all the time because when I look at my pre-diagnosis pictures, I see something different than what other people see when they look at my photos, okay? I see someone who is lonely and angry, frustrated, depressed, right? I look at this person and I don't even recognize her, okay? And that to me is frightening, right? That's who I was prior to diagnosis, right? Just doing my best to fit in, right? No matter how uncomfortable I was. But at the age of 36, or really 35, right? Autism came into my life. I had been 3 years homebound and suicidal when autism came into my life. I had plans. I hadn't picked a date yet, but I was really close, right? I had worked 15 jobs in 13 years, never really staying anywhere longer than 6 months to a year, right? Never, always having to either quit or get fired, right? Couldn't understand why, no matter how hard I tried, it wasn't ever good enough, right? And so I crawled into bed and I gave up and spent 3 years in bed like that, giving up. And then I got my autism diagnosis. My autism diagnosis gave me an opportunity. It gave me a chance. It was a fork in the road, right? It was a moment in my life where I could have very easily said, see, I told you. I told you there was something wrong with me. I told you I was different. I told you I was broken. I told you all these things, right? I was right. Give me my SSDI and leave me alone, right? And the other option was to take that autism diagnosis, decide to see if the information that it gives to me is something I can use to build a life that I'm more comfortable in, that I'm actually successful at, right? And I figured, well, if I take that path as a super logical person, it may not work, but if it doesn't work, I can always go back to just give me my SSDI and leave me alone, right? So I took a leap of faith and I decided to see what would come of this autism diagnosis. And here's what I got: words. I finally got words. I got a vocabulary of words that helped me to describe what was going on for me in my life on a regular basis. It gave me words that accurately described my experience, not words given to me by other people. Okay. I didn't know what a meltdown was, and yet I'd had them my entire life, and they had been called lots of negative things, but they had never really been called what they were. Didn't know what burnout was, even though I was in the middle of it, right? Didn't understand sensory overload or alexithymia or dyspraxia, right? I didn't have any of the language around what my experiences were actually like out in the world. All I had were other people's judgments around how I was out in the world, right? And that made me that angry, sad, depressed person. I became this no cat, right? I was living a no cat life, meaning in order to protect myself, right? And in order to do as little damage to myself as possible, no matter what people asked me to do with them or asked me to try, I always said no. I had learned through experience that saying yes was often painful, right? And it was unsafe and unpredictable. And so what I did was learn to say no immediately to protect myself. And what that did to me as a person was cut me off from a lot of life's experiences, not just the bad ones, but the good ones too. So my first step when I came through with this diagnosis and I was getting all this language and how do I develop it, right, into something I can use, I said, well, what if I start saying yes, right? What if I start saying yes to things that I want to actually try, things that I might be interested in? What if I pause for a moment when people ask me things and I begin to do them instead? Well, I went on a journey with yes. Yes, and I said, okay, we're going to try this. And when things go bad, the goal was not to take the blame, right? The goal was just to start saying yes and not isolate myself, right? Because what I want you to understand is that it takes courage to grow up and become who you really are, right? It's an act of bravery to start saying yes, right? It's an act of love, self-love, right? To start going out and stop isolating, right? What this yes and no game started to teach me was a bunch of self-awareness. I started to learn a lot about what triggers me, what doesn't trigger me, what I'm good at, what I'm bad at, what I like, what I don't like, a whole bunch of things that I had cut out of my life in order to protect myself out in the world, right? Where I was constantly being misunderstood, right? I had to think about my emotional balance and my social awareness and my relationship management. What did all of those things mean to me, right? As a person, right? Now with this new information on board, right? And what I was really seeking to do and trying to solve was to get rid of what I called my loud brain, right? In my brain, it's very loud. There's a lot of information coming in all the time, right? But that information didn't necessarily allow me to be here in the moment and enjoy my life. It was often just a lot of noise, right? And so it was a lot of mindful, like in this picture over here, and not so much being mindful, right? Feel the difference, right? My mind was constantly full, but not at all aware of being present and where I am, right? And that was this beginning of this little journey here, right? And as I'm doing it, I'm realizing that what I'm really looking for is autistic quality of life. What I'm looking for as I'm going through this journey is to improve my own autistic quality of life. But when I started to look around for what we know about autistic quality of life, I found very little. Okay. I found a lot of stuff about the neuromajority and their quality of life. I also found a lot of stuff by the neuromajority about autistic quality of life, right? But nothing from autistics about what made quality of life for them. And that was the beginning of a long journey. I'm still working on this project. I'm still currently doing autistic quality of life research, right? Because we don't have it out there. But this was the beginning of that. This was before I could even imagine doing a research project. This was me in my life, right? So what makes quality of life for me? Well, these are the categories that the world gives us, that the World Health Organization uses, right? But I know I was struggling, right? I was struggling with this work-life balance, and I was struggling in these areas because not all of them mattered to me, right? And all of those things. So I had to really start to pick apart this stuff and go on this journey. And that's when I started reading all those books, right? Because the words matter, right? What we call things matters to us, right? And so what I wanted to know is what words matter to me, right? Because words matter and how we say them, but how we feel about those words and how we interpret those words matters more, right? How a word makes you feel and what it makes you think of matters. So we're going to talk about that, okay? Because that was really where my journey started to unfold, okay? For example, I started in the beginning. I started with myself, my name. Who am I? Like who am I out in this world, right? Well, let's see. If I have to give myself, right, a definition like it's the dictionary, this is what I think I would write about myself, right? I'm a human, I'm an autistic, diagnosed on the autism spectrum as an adult, right? An active advocate and life coach for individuals on the spectrum. Good, that's what I do. Familiar form of Rebecca. Yep, there it is. A lurophile, which is a fancy way of saying cat lover. Right? There I am. If I had a little dictionary definition, that's what it would look like. And that's the picture that would be there. And that's all fine and well, right? Until we get to words that aren't personal, right? Until we get to words that the world defines for us, right? And this is my word. This is the word I started with because this word, success, right, tortured me my entire life. For the first 36 years of my life, I chased success like nobody's business. That was the goal, right? To just be successful. If I was just successful, everybody would leave me alone, right? So when I started to think about what I was chasing with success and what does the word success mean to me, right? I said, well, let me think about first, what does the dictionary tell me this word means? Let's start there. And this is the dictionary definition of success. A favorable, prosperous termination of attempts, the accomplishment of one's goals, the attainment of wealth, position, honors, or the like, a person or a thing that has had success as measured by attainment of goals, wealth, position, honors, or the like, right? Okay. So when I hear this definition of success, the first thing that happens in my brain is it goes, ew. Well, the attainment of position, wealth, and honors or the like does not feel good to me. But it certainly is what the world out there tells us to chase, right? When I picture the word success as I used to understand it, this is the image that comes up in my head. Perfect little house, you have to have lots of money, you have to have a little family that you're raising, get married, right? That's success. When you have those things in order, right? That's what the world was telling me I needed. And that's the version of success I was chasing and failing at miserably. So I started to rethink about this word a little bit. What if I redefine this word to be closer to what I think it is, right? And take off some of the things that don't work. So I did, right? Here's the part of the definition that worked for me. The favorable accomplishment of one's goals. Yes, there is a non-judgmental, factual statement. The favorable accomplishment of one's goals, right? Great. This attainment of wealth, position, and honors or the like had me riled, right? So I said, that doesn't work for me at all. I think it's really more about achieving a goal toward which one has worked, right? Like if I set a goal for myself and I get there, I have had success, right? Whether or not in the process I got wealthy or I got honors or any of it doesn't matter, right? That's how I see it, right? And last, of course, I'm going to take away measuring things by attainment of goals and wealth and position and honors and just say it's a person or a thing that has had success. If you've had it, you're a success. Congratulations, right? And when I looked at the definition this way, this is the picture that came into my head. And that's really a lot closer to how I feel when I succeed, right? I'm on top of a mountain. I feel in charge. I feel empowered. I feel free, right? And that to me feels a lot closer to success, right? So I knew I was getting there and I was close, but not quite right. So I went at it again and I kind of pared it down again. What if success is simply the accomplishment of one's goals, the achieving a goal that one has set for oneself? So, not a goal that the world has set for you, but a goal that you've set for yourself, right? And getting there and achieving it. And a person that has had success as measured by you, just you. It only matters if it's success according to you. If other people think you're successful and deem it success, but you don't feel that success inside, it's not success. If you have felt it inside, but other people are judging it, right? It's success. They don't get to take that away from you. And this is what success looks like to me. It doesn't look like working a corporate 9-to-5 job, married with children. Okay. It looks like running my own business from home in a capacity that I can manage, in a space that feels safe and cozy, surrounded by my animals. That is success. And I did that. Okay. I had searched in those 13 jobs over 15 years to work for somebody else and have it feel like this, and it didn't. And so I made it myself. And that is success. Right. And that's the version of success that I now hold myself to. Does it feel like this version of success? Or am I not happy because I'm chasing something else? Right? Success is just one of the many buzzwords that we all have in our lives, right? So here's a list of some other common ones that folks tell me about all the time, right? Health, love, wellness, relationships, knowledge, family, independence is a big one in our community, right? Boundaries, right? All of these words carry some other implicit things with them. People have experience in their lives with these words, right? And what they mean to them. But so do you. And you get to decide what these words actually mean in your life. And I'm going to give you another example. So I did success for you and I did it one way. But here's the thing, I shared with you a little bit earlier that I'm somebody who was learning about my 𝗔𝘂𝘁𝗶𝗰, right? I was starting to understand that I struggle naming my emotions, right? I know I feel things big, right? But when people ask me to name my emotions or to tell them how I'm feeling, right? Challenging to put words to that, really challenging, right? And so how, right, do I then go about handling words, buzzwords, trigger words like love, right? Because there's another one that the world talks to us about when we're very young. This person loves you. I love you. Valentine's Day is about love. Oh, I love that. Love, 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 right? We use it all over the place. We tell people that the whole purpose of being alive is to feel loved, right? But what is love?
To you? What does it mean to you?
Right? That whole idea is something
That
I have thought about, worried about, concerned myself about more times than I can even tell you, right? Because I have struggled with this word a lot. When I started this journey and I started to think about love, I said, you know what? I worked on success, and that I did in a very verbal way. But I can't be verbal about love. So what if I do it with pictures? What if I think about this as a in a completely visual process, right? So I started to say, well, what do I think about when I think of love? And I went on the internet and I Googled images of things that I think of when I think of love. So I think about how they tell us we should have romance, and romance is so important, right? And romance is chocolate and roses and big dates and fancy, getting dressed in champagne, and right, that's part of what they tell us love is, right? I also was thinking about love in terms of this perfect Barbie-Ken relationship, which is one that has been pranced in front of us through media for many, many decades, right? But that's what love should look like, right? Of course, when you fall in love, you should be falling in love with someone first of the opposite sex, right? And then, of course, you should also go right about it and having children, right? And so that if you're not ending up in these scenarios where you're not having chocolate and roses multiple times a year with your picturesque spouse of the opposite sex and then working your way towards children, are you really in love? Right? That's what the world says to us. Right? Well, I had to really think about that because this version of love feels disingenuous to me. That has not been what I experience or what I want out of love. This slide is a lot closer to what I want to be love. And people laugh that I use Pooh and his friends. But if you've ever spent any time with any kids or by yourself watching Pooh and Friends, you'll understand what I mean by that. Pooh and his friends love each other for all of their brokenness. They love each other exactly how they are. Right? Eeyore is loved in his sadness and Tigger is loved for his bounciness, right? All of those things, right? And that's what friendship and love should feel like a big old giant hug, no matter how you appear in the world, right? And if it's not that, right? Maybe it is with one person. Maybe you do get that lucky, right? But it certainly wouldn't be I wouldn't want to be with this person, right? Living this picturesque life. Maybe I'd want to be with this person on a desert island. Maybe that's where I'd want to be solo, right? And if we're going to have kids, at least let us be like casually hanging out on the beach with our one kid, not two, maybe, right? Closer, feels a little more true to me, but not quite right. And that's because to me, this is love, right? Love is what I had between my mom and I. To me, love is trust and safety, right? Love is knowing unconditionally that you are accepted, right? Love is knowing that you can count on people, right? And so to me, this is love, right? This is what love feels like and looks like. And this slide couldn't be more different than chocolate and roses and Barbie, right? Because there's no way that my husband and I look like Barbie and Ken when we go anywhere, okay? But that's love. And that was the journey to love. So when I was going through all of these little things and kind of tweaking how I was thinking about these important triggers in my life, I said, you know what I really need? You know what I really want? I want a life that I don't need a vacation from. Because my entire life I had spent, right, living for the weekends, right? And it started in school. It started back when I had to go to school all day long, Monday through Friday, and that was a traumatizing experience. And so I would kind of hold my breath figuratively Monday through Friday, right? Just to go, on Saturday and Sunday, right? And just kind of try to capture myself and recharge and be left alone. And I would have no energy on Saturday and Sunday to do anything else, not for joy, not for fun, not for relaxation, just the things that I had to do and to stay away from people and the energy of the outside world. And so I was living this push through Monday, Friday, relax Saturday, Sunday, push. And then I would start to fantasize. What if Saturday and Sunday were longer? What if I had a 3-day weekend? What if I could go away on vacation for 2 weeks and for 2 whole entire weeks, I could just have Saturday and Sunday feeling, right? And that's when I realized that I was wasting my entire life waiting for those vacations, waiting for the respites from the majority of my life. And so what I really wanted and what I really needed was a life that I don't need to take a vacation from. A life that feels so good and so comfortable to me that I don't need a vacation from it. That in fact, I don't want to go anywhere, right? And that became the goal. That became why I started to rethink about all of these words and their impact on my life. Right? Because I, chasing all the wrong definitions of these words, built a life that I constantly needed a vacation from, right? That all I wanted to do was escape. So I was set about to undo all of that, right? And I began with thinking about what was missing, because there was something huge missing, right? I'd had experience with a lot of the things over here that people say life is made of. right? Health, family, friends, happiness, work, career. I'd had these things, right? But what I hadn't had in many years, right, decades even, was joy, pure autistic joy. In fact, I realized that my joy had been judged out of me at a very early age, right? I, right, didn't do joy right for people. I didn't find joy in the right things. I was too flappy, excited, loud, whatever when things were joyful, right? For their comfort. My joy made everyone around me uncomfortable. And so I let myself miss out on joy. And I decided it was time to put it all back in. And that's when I realized it was time to create a life that really had the joy built into it. So I started to think about marriage. At this point, I had met my husband. I was closer to really understanding love, but I knew, I swore I would never get married, right? And I knew I loved this man, and I did. I wanted to spend the rest of my life with him, and that's great. But I didn't have any desire for us to get married, right? None. Because when I thought about marriage, this is what I thought about, right? I thought, well, my whole life, everyone said, you got to marry someone, you got to marry, especially a man, so he can take care of you and all of these things, right? And this is how I understood marriage, that it's a state of being united as spouses in a consensual and contractual relationship recognized by law. What? I don't want to have somebody legally required to love me, right? That doesn't make sense with my definition of love. I don't want somebody to have to sign a contract that says they love me, right? Then it's the act of marrying or the right by which the married status is affected, right? So literally going from checking single box to checking married box. Oh, let me chase that, rushing down to do that, right? And then, of course, there's this little unimportant piece on the bottom, an intimate or close union. Okay, well, out of this definition, that's the only part that really works for me is the intimate and close union, and I don't care about the rest of it. So no wonder I am not chasing marriage. I don't want a baby. I don't need fucking bills in my mailbox, right? And I don't need to chase all these things that other people tell me are the goals, right? So I started to wonder about marriage itself. Well, what are the things I think about when I think about marriage? I think about these things here, right? All of these images here, right? And I just want you to take a moment and really look at this slide, right? Because when I look at this slide, the big takeaway for me is that these are all things and they're real, but they are not marriage. It's a bridal party, a wedding ceremony, a reception, people fighting, adultery, and divorce. Those are the things, those are the words that hung out with marriage in my brain, right? Of them, most of it has to do with the wedding ceremony, and the other part of it has to do with fear, right? Of it going wrong, of it going badly. And that's the experiences that I had with marriage, going to people's weddings, right? And then watching them get divorced, right? But these things are not actually marriage. And these things don't have to go with the word marriage. But they were living there rent free and keeping me from marriage because I had this incorrect definition. But guess what? When you change your definition of what marriage is, right, you get to have it, right? Because I don't have to have all of those things. My husband and I took ourselves down to off-season Telluride, Colorado. We climbed a mountain with our wedding certificate, right? It was he and I, and at the time we only had 2 dogs. So our 2 dogs, you can see them. There we are, dressed in our hiking clothes. We hiked up this mountain called Wedding Vale Falls, right? We got to the top, signed our little paper together, put on our rings, and climbed back down, and boom, married. None of those things had to happen on there, right? None of those nightmares, right? And here we are, married, right? And now I can tell you we're years later married and still going strong, because we're living a marriage that works for us. There was no dressing up or walking down an aisle, no dancing in front of people, right? Then I decided to tackle home, because home was another one. I wanted so badly that sense of home, right? That deep belonging and safety that home is supposed to provide you with, right? But when I looked at the definition of home, bleh, look at this. The place where one lives permanently. Wait, hold on. That's a house, not a home, right? Especially as a member of a family or a household. Oh, well, if you're a member of a family and you're living somewhere permanently, oh, now it's a home, right? An institution for people needing professional care or supervision. So the alternative definition, it's either this permanent place of residence, right? Or is where we send people to get professional care. But that's not how I want to feel about going home, right? And this is the picture I always had of home. It's these perfect houses, perfectly aligned next to each other with their perfect lawns and perfect bushes, right? And being able to yell at each other from one window to another. Also something that is not interesting to me. None of this appeals to me, right? Well, that's got to shift, right? I have to make it shift if what I want my home to feel like is different. So I started to think about what I really wanted home to be. And I looked up a whole bunch of pictures of people's homes and what people thought of home. And these are some of the images that I came up with. These ridiculous little houses that all look the same, lined up together, right? The big backyard with the dog, right? Of course, family dinner, because that's how all modern families do things. We all have our 5 p.m. dinner together with our roasted potatoes, right? And then, of course, that dinner is followed by family game night. Don't you know that we all do that when we're home, right? Nobody's house, nobody's life looks like this version of home, right? That's not possible. This is what we're shown on TV, but that's not really home, right? No. But this was what home looked like for me. So this was my reference for home, okay? I grew up in New York City. I grew up in Queens, to be exact. And this is what my apartment looked like. Those two doors next to each other are just two separate sides of the apartments. There's one on top, one on bottom. So those two doors represent 4 families living, right? Sharing walls with each other, right? I grew up with a cat and my mom, right? And my grandma, and that's it, right? Nobody else, and certainly not having big family dinners, right? This is the highway I learned to drive on. It's the Grand Central Parkway, and it scares me. This is the inside of Penn Station at rush hour. That's how I had to get to work. And these are the trains I had to take to get from Queens into Manhattan to do said work. So this was my reference for home. And I look at these pictures, and except for the picture of me with my mom and my grandma, it looks loud and crowded and scary. And that's what I understood home to be. Okay. But when I started on this journey, I said, that's not what I want home to be anymore. And so we picked up, my husband and I, and our whole family. We moved ourselves cross country from New York City to Colorado, up into the Rocky Mountains, right? Where we lived in this big giant house in the middle of nowhere. And I loved it. Okay. We made our way to 3 dogs in this house, right? And our cats. And this is what home started to feel like. I was so much more comfortable, right? I could breathe. Nothing was trapping me in, right? And we were all going well there. And then COVID happened and things started to shift. And what started to feel good as home changed, and it didn't feel so good anymore. Colorado felt far away from everyone else. Colorado felt exposed. We felt exposed. We missed we missed our seasons and the water. And there were things that were starting to shift in the way we were functioning and living our lives that we were no longer feeling like Colorado was home. And the best part about that is home gets to go with you wherever you go. So we picked ourselves up from here, moved cross country again, right? Even though this shift was ginormous. And I honestly forgot that this slide wasn't here for a second. But this is just a comparison slide to show you the difference between living in New York and living in Colorado. So that's the post office in Manhattan. That's the main post office in Manhattan for all of New York, right? That was my post office in Colorado. There's that highway that I learned to drive on. There's the highway that ran through our town in Colorado, right? The difference was huge, right? Huge. And for my poor little sensory system, it was glorious. But again, it wasn't perfect. And so recently, as I was saying, we moved cross country again. And now we live in Maine, and that's where I'm coming to you from right now. We picked up our lives, and now our 4 dogs, our 6 cats, our 2 snakes, and our tortoise, and moved ourselves from Colorado to Maine. We got our fall back, we got the water, we were closer to family who now can come and visit us on a regular basis, right? And it's much more green, right? It just feels better, right? And I'm really hoping that this is it, right? That I get to die here, that in the house that we're in and then the property that we own now, that I found home, right? Because I feel home now. And every time I leave my house and I go to the stores, I still feel like I'm in the right place. And as the seasons passed, I'm still feeling like I'm home. And that's what I'm hoping, right, will stick around. But if it doesn't, I have the tools to pick ourselves up and move us again, because home goes with us, right? And that takes me to kind of where we are right now. Why was this whole journey so important, right? Well, it's important because it helped me create my course. This journey has now become a course that you can take, right? And so you can learn the tools that I've gleaned from all of those personal development books. I put them all together in one course that's not even just the meat and potatoes, it's just the meat. I gave us only what we need in that course in order to create a life we don't need a vacation from. Just those tools, nothing else. Just the things you need to know and the tools you need to use and how you need to do them. And that's it, right? No extras, no nothing, no gray areas. Because in the 10 years since I've gotten diagnosed, I know that autistic adults are not being taught the things in this box. We are not being taught decision making. We are not being taught how to make long-term plans. We are not being taught how to set and meet individual goals. We're not taught to trust ourselves. We're not taught to learn our needs and wants. And we're not taught to develop our own personal identity. And if you are not taught how to do those things as an autistic person, they are impossible to learn because everyone else just gleans it from the people around them. And we don't. We need to be taught these things. Not just taught them because we are capable of doing them, but taught them because we don't learn the way everybody else learns. And that's where self-defined living came from this journey and knowing that we need these things and there's nobody out there with the autistic experience giving them to us. I'm going to leave you with one final lesson out of all of this stuff, and it's the one that came to me when I lost my mom. Okay? The big lesson is around time. Time is a non-renewable resource, okay? Meaning, for lots of other things out there, like oxygen, like water, like food, right? These are all renewable resources. But your time, once it's gone, it's gone. You can't go back and get it back. You can't go to the store and buy more time. You can't grow time, right? That's not how it works. Once it's gone, it's gone. And we are all given a set of time on this planet, a limited set of time, right? And we are allowed to choose who we give that time to and who we give that energy to. But we can never get that back, right? And if you can't get it back, you got to be more and more careful what you do with it. Right? When you understand that time is not renewable, its value goes up, right? It becomes a priority. And that is important because time, right, comes to us in lots of different ways, right? We think about it in lots of different ways. Lots of people think about time spiraling, right? And that there's never enough time, right? And time's melting away. And how am I going to get this done on time? Right? But time, at least clock time, right, is a human construct. Time out in the world is different. Real time looks like this, right? What day is it? It's today. It's the only day you have, today. Can't go back to yesterday, can't rush ahead to tomorrow. All you have is today, now, right now. What time is it? It's now. It's always now, right? And there's time as we know it cyclically, sunset and sunrises, our seasons, right? There's naturally phasing time, right? But the time your train leaves is invention. That's human invention, right? So with this knowledge, I remind you something that comes to us from Steve Jobs, who is somebody who, despite all of the things that people dislike him for, someone who understood about time because it was stolen from him by pancreatic cancer. Okay? Your time is limited. You don't know when it's coming to an end. So don't waste it living somebody else's life. Take the time that you have left to create your own version of a life that you don't need a vacation from. You don't owe that to anybody else, right? And so that's my big lesson for you today. I'm going to take the last 3 minutes that I've got and just share with you ways you can connect with me. If you like what I talked about today, if it's not too kind of woo-woo for you and you think it's interesting and you'd like to grab more, please, please, please go ahead to my YouTube channel, which the link will be in the slides, and I can also put it here. But if you YouTube 𝗣𝗲𝗄𝗃, you'll find me. Every Monday at 11:30, I do a live stream on YouTube called Growing Gratitude, where I talk about the things that are challenging in my life right now as an autistic adult and how we go about getting through those things, right? And how we learn to take care of our meat suit and protect our headspace, right? But also keep our eyes open for all the glimmers that are out in the world, because the triggers are easy to find. The glimmers are hard, right? On this slide, I will give you a free downloadable challenge called Sprouting Gratitude. It's a growing gratitude challenge that you are welcome to click on and download. I will also, once I'm done sharing, I'll put the link in chat for you guys to go ahead and try that out if you'd like. If you want to take the course is out there, Self-Defined Living. It is ready for you. You can register for it today and start Unit 1 all by yourself. It is a self-study course done all virtually. So you do it at your pace. You get to keep everything forever, because my hope is that the lessons are good enough that no matter the challenge in your life, you can go to them. And then last of all, my book came out last year around this time. So if you haven't checked it out, it's called Always Bring Your Sunglasses. It's a little tiny short book filled with the stories that I experienced as a kid when I was undiagnosed, right? But still struggling with all those autistic things, and what I've learned since then about that stuff. It is meant for us to use to share with other people that we would like to understand what it's like to be autistic. So if you know professionals, if you have loved ones, if you yourself just want to feel validated in your experience, please check out the book. I'd appreciate it. These are all of my links to all the ways that you can find me. I do have a Patreon where I do some more stuff over there. But yeah, and I have a newsletter. My newsletter is also available on my website. That's also free. So a bunch of free ways that you can continue on this journey with me if it's something that you're interested in. And of course, I talk about this stuff on my social media as well. And with that, I will go ahead and stop sharing, take us to questions, and see if you guys have anything you want to chat about.
Thanks, Becca. You particularly will appreciate this. I have a cat emergency today. So just wanted to let people know that they can raise their hands if they have questions. Becca's more than capable of leading the discussion on this. I'm going to stay in the background, but I could need to go at any moment. Thanks also for offering all of the free stuff. We have, as you know, we're chronically under and unemployed as autistic people. So that's always an important feature. Thank you. And I'll turn it over to you. Thank you, Becca.
My pleasure. All right, so that is kind of it for me. If there's anybody that would like to ask questions, please go ahead, raise your hand now, or you can put it in chat. If you just like to take the time to process and not ask questions, I fully understand, and you can think about it and get in touch with me some other way. But let me go ahead and put some things into chat for you so they're easy to click on and you can kind of take them with you while I've got you. So there's my LinkedIn, let's see. And I'll give you my YouTube also for easies. Okay, here's that. Can you share the slides and as much info as possible? Yes. So Roger, I will send you an email with a PDF of the slides. And then if folks want it, they can absolutely ask you for it. And you are also welcome to email me directly and ask for them, and I can send them to you directly. But I will send Roger a PDF of the slides. Absolutely. And then let's see, here's the course for you. Boop. Okay, I see you. Don't worry about raising your hand. You can ask your question and unmute yourself.
Hi, thanks for the presentation. A lot of it really resonated with me, especially the part about the torture of work. I just wondered, to what extent do your course materials kind of take class position into account? Because it seems like, I don't know what your class position is, but you were able to kind of pick up and move across the country by land, and some of us are just not in a position. And I just wondered, like, can you speak to that?
Absolutely. So it's really, my course doesn't talk about moving specifically, right? That was my journey. The hope of the course is that people figure out the part of their lives where they are uncomfortable and start working there. For me, it was my location, and I would have peeled off my own skin to move. And so what I did have to do that essentially. I was living in New York City, and I'd spent 40 years saving to get out. Right? Not possible. The only way, honestly, that I was able to get out is by being one on SSDI, which I was on. And you're able to take SSDI with you when you move out of state. By the way, you can transfer it state to state because it's federal funding. And so I was on that all that time. I only recently have gotten off SSDI, but I was still able to do it, unfortunately, because I lost my mother. And so the apartment we were living in, I was able to turn around and sell. And that's really what that is. But every single one of us has parts of our lives that we have control over, that we can make changes in. And so what I do is I give people these generalized tools that to me are like a skeleton system that you can lay down on your life and figure out where you want to be. And that's going to be a lot of personal decisions, including like what monetary things do you have? What do you have available? Is what it is that you're looking for or looking to do something that you can accomplish right now? Or is it not? And it was something I had to work towards, right? I did all of these things, but you're looking at 10 years of growth in those slides, right? I just moved to Maine 2 years ago, to give you some like window into. So this by all means is not something that happens overnight. It's taken me over a decade, but it began this way. So each person is going to have different challenges and different barriers. For some people, it will be monetary. For other people, it's not monetary, and it's something else that's a barrier for them that they need to deal with first. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, that helps me understand where you're coming from.
Awesome. This person says, do you have any thoughts on when daily living tasks at home are the thing you feel you need a break from? I'm happy at my job, self-employed, and it works for me. Working less is not an option I want. Like daily living, yes, daily living tasks feel so huge. So I have a great answer for you, and I'm going to answer it the best that I can. And that is to say to you, if those tasks of daily living are the things that are draining your spoon so that you are not able to enjoy your life, you are allowed to create supports for those things, right? And so there are a lot of people that feel like daily living tasks are exhausting to them, myself included, right? And some of the things that I did to get a break from those things were small, but they were huge. So when I first got diagnosed, I was having this problem to no end. And I had to figure out how to make sense in my brain that I could be a functional person and also be really crappy at taking care of my house and keeping my house clean, right? So those were like two things. I can also be a really functional person, like at my job and all of that, but at the same time, not be able to meal plan, right? That's me. So I'm somebody who, if I'm left to my own devices, has to buy a lot of takeout, right? Or have things that are pre-made, right? Not very good at those things, right? Great at my job, right? Not so good at those little things. And what I had to do is learn to farm those out. And that comes from that misnomer of independence, right? We are taught to be that we should all be functional, independent adults, but no human being is independent. Okay. Every human being is interdependent, meaning that we all rely on other human beings for something, for help with something, right? And for me, that something isn't my job or the things I do for work. For me, that something is housework and meal planning, right? And that kind of maintenance. And so I have to ask for help with those things. And those are the things that I need supports with. So supermarket shopping, I stopped going and I started shopping online. And I felt really guilty and really bougie and like silly for spending money on it. But I work really hard at my job. And if I want to spend my money that I've worked for to help support my life by paying a little extra for my groceries and doing online shopping, that's a choice that I get to make, right? You know, lots of people have a cleaning person that comes to their home once a month, right? And does a deep clean. And they pay them once a month to do that, right? And so it's all about what is available to you, what's within your grasp, but also and mostly about understanding that there's no shame in asking for help with daily living tasks. Okay. Just because you're good at your job and you can hold down a full time job doesn't mean that you can't ask for help in other areas. So let's start thinking about them. What are the ones that are hardest for you? What is a way you could start to give that away? Is there someone you can share that task with? Is there somebody that you could hire to come in and do that with? Could you apply for government funding for some support on those things to have someone come in, right? There's lots of different ways, but what I say to you is there is no shame in being exhausted by daily tasks. We are shown a version of other people's lives in which their lives look perfect. The majority of people, if you open the door to their house on a day they weren't expecting you, their house is going to be a mess, right? And that's the truth. So it has to feel good to you. If you're comfortable in a messy house, maybe cleaning it so often doesn't have to be a priority, right? It's about adjusting those pieces. It's clear your job is a priority, and that's awesome. But if that's where you've chosen to give your spoons and then you don't have any energy left to clean the house, you don't want to not live in a clean house. So we have to find another way to accomplish that. You're fortunate enough to have a job, right? And so hopefully you'll be able to figure out how to have those supports in there. But these are those breakdowns. These are those moments for you exactly in creating a self-defined life, right? It's saying, wait, I don't want to stop doing my job so I have the energy to clean my house. I love my job. I am going to keep doing my job and I'm going to find another way to get my house clean because that's what my life should look like, right? Says, I feel like my experience completely mirrors yours, Becca, down to the cross-country moves from New York to the Southwest. Thank you for all your work on this. Thank you so much, right? And I'm glad you got the courage to get up and move. I think that's one of the hardest things for us as autistics. We love to be around the things we know, right? And it's hard to pick up and move somewhere you don't know where anything is or where you're going to get your safe food from or what your new doctor is going to be like, right? And all of those things. So kudos to doing that because I think once we push through that, we end up in a much better space for ourselves. Do you have your hand up? Do you want to ask a question?
Yes, thanks. It really hits home when you're talking about the daily living stuff. Yeah, I can do my work, but the managing the household and the doing all the little tasks and the shopping and all, but the part I have given myself some permission to delegate or do my shopping online and just go pick it up at the grocery store and not go in for the sensory and the time and the um but what what I'm still mystified by is, and I think this is even more pronounced. For I was fine on a lot of the administrivia in life until I had kids, and now between my partner and I, we have five adult kids. They're not at home, so you'd think that would lower it, but there's still complications, and there's a grandchild, and it's the classically, you know, uh, cisgender female feeling like I'm tracking everybody's everything and kind of running the household, even though I have a perfectly willing partner, but he just doesn't think of things. And it's kind of being the hub of the wheel and the manager of the life and the household that I have no one to delegate that to because of just the way he's wired and the way the culture works and I want to pour myself into my work more. You know, that's what gets shortchanged. And I'm
Right.
good at that and I'm bad at so much else, but I have no concept of who I could delegate that to because it's a
Yep.
brain function, it's a managing function, it's a tracking.
It is, but it's also, I would love for you to start thinking about it in terms of your energy or your like spoons and spoon theory, right? Because I would bet that you can do your job for more hours at a time than you could do that administrative household running things, right?
Because when we're
Good at stuff and we
enjoy
enjoy stuff, we can maintain it for a much longer period,
period.
right?
So it doesn't
Drain us as often.
Right.
this
Other thing over here, the house administration drains us in about 2 seconds,
right out of like
that kind of thing. And so what I want you to think about it as is, can I take away some of the things that are draining? Can I pass that along? And I know you're saying you don't know who to, but what I want you to do is think about that as a habit, because there is somebody, right? Yes, culturally it might not be true. You have to make your own rules. If it's in your house and you are missing out on things in your life, if your partner truly cares for you and is truly a partner,
they don't want to see that.
but probably he has no idea that's happening for you, right? So what we have to do is say, hey, I really love doing my work and I'm really good at this thing. I'm really bad at this and I know you need me to do it and it has to get done.
But how
can I make it less of a burden in my life? Can I make it a smaller piece of what I do regularly, right? And so, for example, thinking about things that maybe you monitor that don't really need to be monitored anymore. Maybe you monitor them out of habit, right?
or maybe you're
Monitoring them by someone else's rules, right? Like someone told you, oh, to be a good wife, I need to take care of these things. That's what makes a good wife, right? And to check in there and make sure you're not doing it for that reason, right? And really think about, especially, it sounds like your husband may also be neurodivergent. So to think about, no?
No.
Okay, so maybe think about another way to communicate with him.
rather than the way you
Usually communicate. Maybe he's somebody who, if you list out the things that are really challenging for you,
in that
administrative piece,
on a piece of paper.
for him to see that you actually do them,
Could you help me with
these things.
right?
That makes it different for some of us. I have terrible audio processing. My husband can tell me things till I'm blue in the face. If he gives it to me on a note, I'm doing it.
Right?
So we got to find out that space between you and your husband. How does that work? That information exchange for you guys, because he has to hear that it's a priority to you.
He needs to
Understand that it's making your life uncomfortable.
that I put
In my time,
we have 5 grown children.
right?
I don't want to.
Not my child,
I want a partner.
right? And those are boundaries, and they're hard to set. But when we set them and we communicate about them, it really makes for very happy and functional partnerships, right? Because
Because at the end of it,
probably your husband would be happier to know that he's making you happy and you're comfortable in your life than that he's making your life difficult, right? So we got to figure those pieces out. Maybe figure out how
how
to
to communicate.
communicate those things to him, but also identify the ones that you'd really like to get rid of the most, right?
No, I think you raise good points in terms of I think I may not be specific enough, and I think for a lot, I don't want to overgeneralize, but I think for a lot of men there are a lot of invisible tasks or invisible tracking and managing uh, tendencies, and I think the laying out on paper is a good idea.
Perfect. And it'll probably be helpful to you because of those invisible tasks. Am I doing ones that I don't need to do anymore? Right? Like maybe there are ones in there that you do
That they are
now your responsibility, but maybe they don't have to be anybody's responsibility anymore.
right?
Mhm.
And that kind of thing. Because as we grow and evolve as people and our marriages change and our lives change, that stuff changes too. So what worked for you when your kids were young, right, isn't going to work for you now in the same way. Awesome. I hope that that's helpful and a place to start.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you.
You're welcome. I have been asked here, have you ever worked one-on-one with a therapist on behavior issues? No, I have not. I do not like the word behavior. I have worked with a therapist myself, but I have not worked with anyone particularly on behavior issues. I was not diagnosed till I was an adult, so I didn't ever receive any supports beyond therapy. I see your thank you over there. You're welcome. I hope that helps. Happy to be here for you as a resource if you need.
Yes. Oh,
I like this idea in here. Who wrote this? It just disappeared on me. You can also look online for lists of daily household chores and circle and highlight the ones that are most troublesome and stressful to get an idea of what to delegate. That's another way, right? Because again, sometimes it's just something about having it written down that makes it real for people and understanding that there's actual energy that has to happen to make those tasks occur, right? Somebody's doing that. So I love that. That's a great idea to look up household chores, right? And then add in your own whatever special ones that you have as a family. Awesome. All right. Well, I think we made our way through chat.
Hey, Becca, there's one question. I think, do you have time for one more? I think
Sure,
there's one
absolutely.
got missed here.
Yep.
This question is, what can you offer to young autistic girls in terms of advice about finding love or significant others? For neurodivergent and autistic young people, dating and marriage are scary for a lot of reasons. How can autistic young people deal with such societal pressures?
It's really, really rough. So I have like big, like meta advice, and then I have little tiny advice that just because of where we are now. So my big meta advice is our girls need to learn confidence, and they need to first learn to trust themselves, to like themselves, right? And to have self-confidence before we want them to be dating anybody of any gender, any which way, right? That's one of the things that autistic girls don't get, right, is validation in who they are, and thereby the confidence to stand up for themselves, to advocate, right? And that's how we get taken advantage of, right? We get pushed into those positions when instead, if we bring our girls up knowing that they are perfect exactly the way they are, right? And that nobody should be looking to put them in those positions, they come in with the confidence in those relationships to say, no, that's not good for me, right? Because we know that in general, autistics have been taught to be people pleasers, right? We've been taught to change our behaviors and our responses to make other people comfortable. And in a dating scenario, that is not where you want to be, right? That's the opposite of what you want to do. You don't want to be people pleasing a partner, right? That's how dangerous things happen. And so we need to make sure that our girls are well out of the people pleasing phase before we send them into dating. If it's someone who is older, right, we're getting closer to 18 and we're really kind of trying to push our independence and explore and expand, I really recommend the Hickey app. I don't know if you guys have heard of it, but it is out there. It is a fantastic app for neurodivergent folks to meet other neurodivergent folks, to begin to experiment with those social things, right? To be in a setup where everyone is being open and honest and direct and communicating in an autistic way, right, with each other. Then if you get good at that, it's a little bit easier to go out and sort of venture into other neurotypes that you're comfortable socializing with. But get good at your autistic socializing, right? Autistics are never encouraged to do our own version of socializing. So get good at autistic socializing first, then we can send them out with everybody else, right? And so those are the things that I recommend. It's a dangerous, scary world out there, period, right now, like with everything that's going on. Forget dating and all of that. But technology makes it unsafe, right? It makes it easy for people to hide, to lie, to do all of those things. And on autistics, that's not our nature. We don't think that someone's doing that first. We think they're being honest first. And that's where we run into danger circles. So those are my things. It's sort of, there's some about learning about technology and safety online. But then there's a lot about encouraging them to just really be themselves, to learn how to communicate autistically, confidently, right? And to be able to stand up and advocate for themselves in all scenarios. I'd love to see that. I hope that's helpful. Oh, somebody's asking. It's 𝗔𝘂𝘁𝗶𝗀𝘁𝗶𝗰 app, right? Maybe 1K, but it's a K in there. But they're great, and it's run by a bunch of autistic people. It's been up for a bunch of, I think, about 3 or 4 years now, and it's haven't had any complaints from our community. I haven't heard anybody saying anything bad has happened to them on there. I like just lots of really good positive feedback from it. So and I love their social. That they put out a lot of good educational content as well. So recommend. Yeah. Anything else? Oh, yay. Thank you for putting it in chat. That's it. Yay. All right. Fantastic. All right. Well, I think that's it for us today. If nobody else has any other questions, I guess we'll let ourselves go. And I thank you guys so much. Please feel free to search for me out there in the world. I happen to be a responsive person, and I'd be happy to support you.
Thank you so much, Becca. This has been such a fantastic learning experience. And you know, I know you're super active on social media, and you've been so for so many years. And such an honor to have you share your wisdom here today. So again, thank you so much. And I'll see you online again.
Bye.